This is America.
Peace on left, justice on the right. Peace on left, justice on the right.
This is America.
This is the reason Kaepernick was taking a knee.
Heartbroken when I saw that video. I almost couldn't finish it.
We gotta start making changes.
There's a virus in police departments across this country.
Cops harassing.
Good cops know who these bad cops are.
You have every right to be angry.
Can you tell me why every time I see
You have no right to perpetrate violence on the very communities that you are standing up for.
A lot of people have been using my father's words.
That all men are created equal.
The only pathway to do this is through nonviolent means. No, that it ain't no that can kill my soul.
We will bring you justice, I promise.
But if God got us, then we all right.
Start making some changes.
And welcome to In the Wake TV. I'm your girl, Antoinette Montague, jazz and blues entertainer. And tonight we have the most amazing, incredible, heart-driven, just beautiful person that has a mission that we all need to get behind. And welcome, please, Tonisha Taylor. She is the Dean of Humanities, Social Sciences, and Community Engagement at Lehigh Carbon Community College. Also, she's an amazing licensed social worker. She's a published author, accomplished speaker, founder and board president of Shine a Light, New Jersey, a 501c3 not-for-profit organization started by she and her siblings to reflect the heart and their experiences and turning them into gold and possibilities. Please welcome to In the Wake TV, Tonisha Taylor. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm so happy to be able to talk to you this evening. As spring is about to burst, you are doing such amazing work and an incredible research, working on your PhD and trying to shine and shed a light and heal the world. So tell us how you got started with this work. And the title of it is Human Rights and Resilience, Empowering Black Children of Incarcerated Parents. Wow, that's a mission. And how did you adopt that mission?
So I am a child of an incarcerated parent. So my mother was incarcerated in and out from about age 9 to up until I was about 23. So in and out of state prison, federal prison. And as a child, this is something you kind of carry shame. So you don't talk about it, right? And as an adult, when she got out, she turned her life around, became a social worker herself, committed to a lot of social justice work, was the best grandmother in the world. The grandkids never even knew about her past, and it was by design because all they knew was that they had grandma and she loved them and all of that good stuff. A couple of years ago, my mother passed, and right before she passed, I was working on a project with Dr. Bahia Muhammad, Dr. Brittany Gatewood, Sydney Turner. They were all out of Howard University, and they were editing a book about Black children of incarcerated parents, just speaking truth to power. And I just felt that it was my time to tell my story. So I wrote 2 chapters for that anthology, and then I was going to surprise my mother with it once it was published, but she passed before the book came into print, which was unfortunate, but I still had this drive in me. And one thing my mother wanted was for me to go back to school and earn my doctorate. So I'm pursuing a doctorate of social work at Monmouth University, and when I applied, I said, you know what, this is my time to really turn this story into a mission to help others, right? So I knew right out the gate, this was going to be my capstone. This was going to be something that I wanted to research, and more so, not just looking at the challenges that Black children of incarcerated parents face, but looking at their resilience and just looking at how they thrive through it all. Because you can find a negative statistic anywhere, right? But where can we highlight the positive and highlight the joy? Because I look at myself, even throughout my childhood, I wasn't a statistic, or a labeled child. I was valedictorian in elementary school. I did well in junior high school. I was a typical teenager in high school. So this is Brooklyn. I was outside, right? But even still, I went to college. I persisted. I went to grad school. I did everything that statistically I wouldn't or shouldn't have done if you let regular research tell it. So I think this is a time to amplify the fact that we are out here, we exist, and it's time to reframe how you look at us to see the good, see the resilience, and help us amplify that rather than looking for an intervention for a negative outcome that might not be there.
Well, and we have to be the main providers of our stats.
Absolutely.
We allow too many numbers to be flung out about who we are, but not enough about us building this nation and inventing great, brilliant Black geniuses in the world, like soon to be Dr. Tonisha Taylor.
Thank you. Absolutely. And, and that's the thing. When you see the main statistics, it's negative. You're going to end up in jail yourself or prison yourself or substance abuse and mental health issues. And there's rarely anything that says, no, you can turn around and be a success story. So it's kind of like they want those negative outcomes to manifest.
And I'm just curious, how did you find some of the folks that you interviewed for your case study to come and be forthright and speak up and participate?
So the interesting thing is that this was secondary research. So what I did, that very same book that I was a part of, I turned to that book. I said, these narratives are here. There's over 30 entries in that anthology of Black children of incarcerated parents, just like me, who turned a negative situation into something positive. So throughout that anthology, and another study that I used by Dr. Muhammad and Dr. Gatewood and Sydney Turner, that was another part of the secondary research. Those were narratives too, in which these Black children are saying, yes, this was my experience. However, this is what I turned it into. So you have teachers, you have lawyers in there, you have other people who pursued doctorates, you have people who started nonprofits, are advocates, who are in the arts, who are yoga practitioners, and so on and so forth. And the list goes on. They're all doing amazing things. So this is something that needs to be amplified.
Well, and you certainly are doing your job of making sure that there is a study about the resilience of these families, about the resilience of yourself. Look at you, vibrant, going into an energy where you are doing the work, that's God's work, to love and help each other, to make sure that we focus on the least of these so that we can help lift them to be the best and most of these. Right. And I'm just really amazed that your work really does help inspire Black family, Black love. And how does this surprise you, this work that you're doing now after what you've been through? What was it like being a child going through visits to mom, and what were some of the memories that you had, the good, bad, but the possibility?
So, when you're in it, you're just in it and you're just living and you have all these other things going on. So I didn't really take in the gravity of what it was until I was an adult. I will say that as a child, my mother, she was at Bedford Hills because we're from New York. So she was upstate New York. And the one visit that sticks to me to this day, I had been maybe around 9 or 10. And we're up there and my little brother, he was maybe 2 at the time, if that much. And he's waddling around and he made his way to another family. And it's a white family and he's bouncing on this woman's knee. But I keep looking at this woman and I'm like, I know her. And she's an inmate. I'm like, I know her. And then it's at the same time it clicked for me. My mother said, you better not tell anybody. That woman was Amy Fisher, the Long Island Lolita. At the height of the controversy or what have you, she had just been sentenced, right? Around that time, I believe. And she was there playing with my brother, right? And it's like, I can't tell anybody I saw her or I met her because they would be like, how? Right. And the only way how is I'm in visiting my mother in prison and she's in the same prison. Right. Wow. So, yeah, those are the things that kind of stick with you. But when you look at it as an adult, it was like, wow, that was the gravity of it. So these are the people that she's in prison with, It's just very interesting. As an adult, it became more of a burden because the last time my mother was in prison was around the same time that my grandmother passed. And that was my maternal grandmother. And she was the glue that held the family together. I was 19. And when she passed, I ended up with custody of my 4 siblings.
Wow.
Right. So here I am trying to navigate life myself. And now I have legal custody of 4 kids ranging in ages from 7 to 16. I'm still a kid myself, so it was very difficult. And that's what I kind of mentioned, when you just got to go through it. You don't have time to process, because I knew I had my own personal goals. Giving up school wasn't an option. I had to work, to take care of them. I had 4 mouths to feed, on top of mine. It was a lot, but you just go through it. And unfortunately, what happened was that the collapse, or the mental collapse, comes later, right? And what it came was in the form of a relationship, right? A romantic relationship. And you just think that this person is going to be the one for you. And you tell your story thinking you're going to find comfort and solace. And that's not what happens.
Wow.
So, yeah. So then I did the work. I went to therapy. That's when I unpacked so much of everything. But even still, doing that, making myself whole again, that still wasn't a story that I would tell. It's just something I compartmentalized and said, okay, well, that happened. My mom's out. She's doing well. We're good. Life goes on.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So some of your research talks about the denial of human rights to children of incarcerated persons. And we have laws that actually protect especially that segment. But what rights are being denied in justice and impacting children in the United States?
So this goes back to actually the UN. So the UN Convention of the Children's Rights from 1989, which I want to make a point of, that the US never signed, right? There's a few countries that didn't sign. The United States never signed this convention, right? Big surprise, right? So as an international just recognition of the right of kids, I'll rattle off a couple, but there's Article 3, Sections 1 and 2, which essentially is saying that we need to honor the best interests of the child if there are legal issues or social services steps into play, right? We should have respect for the responsibilities, the rights, and the duties of the parents, right? Even if they're separated from their children. And we know that in many states where sentencing can be very punitive, we're not considering whether or not people are parents or not. We're just sentencing them. And it's that whole you did the crime, you pay the time mentality, without realizing that when a person is incarcerated, especially if they're a family, the whole family is now impacted, if they're a parent. So we have to kind of take that into consideration. Also, go ahead.
Cousins too,
Cousins.
We had family members incarcerated, and then they didn't make their appointment, and they went to a few family members' homes in the middle of the night.
You see?
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
I've been the recipient of a 5 a.m. knock on the door for detectives looking for my mother. You're disrupting the family unit. Why are you here? She's not here, and I have kids here and they need to sleep. And, it's a ripple effect. And so those are the kind of things that are being infringed upon. Another thing, there's a law in place. Some states are starting to walk it back, but it's still not enough. And this has to do with termination of rights. So if a child is in foster care, so let's say mom, dad is arrested and no one in the family can take the child in and they end up in foster care. If that child is in foster care for 15 out of 22 months, the system can move forward with terminating rights. So if mom or dad have a sentence that's longer than 22 months, their rights are terminated, right? And I think back to even with my younger brothers and sisters, my mother had a sentence of 3 years. Had I not stepped in and had I not won custody, I would not have seen my younger siblings again, right? Because they would have been lost to the system.
Incredible. Well, may you be blessed for all of the energy and sacrifice you and your siblings have made, and the pride that you have in sharing this story, because it's needed. And as times get more challenging, we need to understand, but wait, there's more.
Yes.
There's more, but there's more. Absolutely. I mean, what is your now focus? So much has happened. What is now like for you on a human and daily basis? What is your life like? What's your home like?
Whew. So I would say now I'm living a life I never imagined for myself, right? So I grew up in Bushwick Projects. I'm just a little girl from the projects. I would have never thought that here I am living in South Jersey in a house I bought, right? These things were never in the realm of possibility for younger me, right? And here I am making a life for my children that's so far removed from what I experienced that they can't even imagine struggle. right? They can't even imagine. And same thing with my nieces, my nephews, they can't even imagine that was ever a thing, right? And I feel good about that. Like, we can honor our past, but that doesn't mean we have to stay there, right? And from the day to day is just moving forward in that truth and just really trying to help make the world a little bit better, somewhat with every person I touch. Just want them to know, you can do hard things and then you can move forward. And in being open and honest and telling my story, I've met so many other people who have similar stories, but felt that shame in which they couldn't tell it. But now they feel empowered to say, you know what, this is my story too. And I persevered, right? So I can do this. And that's what I really want.
So what would you tell to practitioners, educators, advocates? What should social workers and educators be trained to understand about justice impacted Black children that goes beyond the textbooks?
Definitely adopting cultural humility and understanding that this population is not a monolith. So you can't look at it in the frame of externalized behavior. So aggression, that might not be there, right? So all the things that you want to look for, or trauma responses, or so on and so forth, they may not be there, right? So you really have to reframe how you're looking at this issue, looking at this person as an individual, understanding where their strengths lie and amplifying those strengths, rather than continually looking for textbook deficits, because they may not be there.
So what do we encourage schools to have actively in order to be a part of the protective ecosystem for children with incarcerated parents? How can the schools help?
Definitely, schools play a big role, especially they're with the children more than families sometimes, right? So really understanding, from the school social workers to the teachers, understanding that if these students are presenting with a difficult background, or even if they're presenting as somewhat of a challenge, it's not always just, it's a behavior, we have to do something. We have to do something punitive. Just really understanding what it is. And sometimes the child who's acting out the most is the one who's in most need of the love, the attention, and the care. But I do understand, as teachers, if they're burnt out, they're extended, they're burnt, the candle is burnt from both ends. And sometimes it's easier to just be dismissive, so your day can be easier. But that child is still coming back the next day, and the next day, and the next day. So at some point, we're going to have to get down and see on eye level what's going on and how can we help, right? And what I found in my research, that the role that school played was, if a teacher was aware, if a counselor or a social worker was aware, having the children involved in some type of extracurricular activity or school activity, a poetry group, something simple and can be free. Right? A poetry group, a creative writing group, play, involved in a play or the arts or something like that. So some type of outlet where they can channel that energy, and it doesn't cost too much in terms of overhead to do. And quite a few of the entries from those narratives said, those are the things that kept me. Those are the things that saved my life. Those are the things that I looked forward to. And then they carried that into adulthood and became authors and became actors and actresses, right? So there's a connection there, but it really takes an adult to pay attention and invest in them with that time and energy.
Mm-hmm. I do a lot of programs in prisons, and it's always amazing when we teach our students there to write a blues, and it is always so filled with regret and apology for what they have done.
Right.
I never thought that was a population of people I would work with. But after a while, your heart as a human being opens up and realize, yeah, that could be there before the grace of God go I.
Absolutely.
Look, if somebody moves into my parking spot too quick, and before the grace of God go I. But what would a resilient community look like to you, Tonisha Taylor? And it's such a privilege to get to spend a little time talking to you about your passion for helping a very, very, very challenging and tricky population, children who, parents have been incarcerated, and what that life is like, and how to lift and help them. But what does a resilient community look like to you? And who's in it? Who's Who's involved? What does it take? Where is it centered?
I think it goes back to it taking a village, and we don't have villages anymore, right? So I remember even growing up, everybody knew everybody. Everybody knew whose grandchild I was or whose child I was. Everybody was there, right? And they were able to chastise me if necessary, if I was doing something, or redirect me or what have you. And we've gotten to such a place where that's missing. So if I tell my neighbor's child something, my neighbor's going to bang on my door. How dare you tell my child something? But I'm trying to prevent your child from being hurt, right? I'm coming from a place of care, so that's what's missing. We have to get back to caring for one another. But this has become even more so with the advent of social media and all these gotcha moments. It's such an individualistic society. And you see that some people portray kind and caring for the sake of getting likes. I don't ever want my actions to be recorded just so you can hit a thumbs up and give me kudos for being a good person. A lot of the work that I do is not recorded, and it's fine because I'm not doing it for that.
Right.
So it's really just a shift in just the culture of how we care. It has to start there, from our neighbors, from the people, we don't even know our store owners anymore. When I was young, I used to know the people who own the store, they were a part of the community.
Absolutely.
It's just not like that anymore. And you may have pockets of it depending on where you live.
Okay.
If people have lived in the same setting long enough and they just haven't moved. But the way it is now, it's just very disjointed. So technology has brought us together, but it has done a hit job on separating us even more, right?
And that's our government too, telling us what we can and can't say to our children, be and do with our children. That when that started happening and the government comes into your home to raise your children, then we get what we get. You let them into the schools and let them take your culture and music and art out of your schools. We have to get back to legacy and definitely culture and love.
Yes.
We got too many people running for offices and they never talk about love. They never talk about caring. They might say care, but you rarely hear them talk about love. No. So, you're creating new literature, new language, new possibilities around Black children of incarcerated persons. What legacy do you hope to leave with this work?
So the funny thing is, when my mother passed and I was starting my nonprofit and all of that, I bought a domain name called Sharon's Children, and my mother's name is Sharon. And I didn't know what to do with it. I just said, I'm going to hold it until the time feels right. And the time feels right now, right? That's sharonschildren.org. That's where I'm housing all of this information, the research, resources for children of incarcerated parents, resources for practitioners or what have you. So at the very least, it's the legacy of knowing that myself, my siblings, we went through something, but we made something positive out of it. I don't know if you see what, even with the t-shirt. So the Bully, this is my brother's brand. And he has an incredible story of his own. He's a part-time football coach for Lincoln High School in Jersey City. And he saw that there was a need to train these athletes who couldn't afford personal trainers who cost an arm and a leg, for them to really get on the team and make an impact. He started doing that himself. Wow. And he created this brand to self-finance. So he sells t-shirts, he sells merch or what have you. So he can do the training for these young athletes and they don't have to pay a dime.
Wow.
Right. So it's just, as a family, we're trying to get back to being that village for people. And I'm so proud of him for doing that. And, I'm proud of my other brothers and sisters. Everybody's doing something to just show, that we are part of this village and we care for people genuinely. And it's not for clout or anything like that. We just really want to see change in this world. And, if we can just keep touching one or two people at a time, that's our legacy impacting others.
Absolutely. So what platforms like In the Wake TV, what possibility can they have in shifting the policy about incarceration and its ripple effects to Black families?
I think by amplifying my message and messages from other people who are just as impacted. You know, I'm just one person, but I mean, there's just so many ways that this goes. Even doing my study, it just begat more questions in terms of the impact of relationships between parents and children as the children turn into adults. And what does that relationship look like for reconciliation, right? And I know that there's families out there who struggle with this, right? Mom or dad is back, but I'm an adult now. And what do you do with this? Right. So that's a conversation to be had. When I started talking about this work, I have a good friend in Maryland, and her son was sentenced to 15 years in prison. And she's asking me for resources for parents of children who have been incarcerated. You know, so that's another touch point or another avenue. And it's something that I might not have necessarily thought of. Right. So, I mean, the research right here is ground zero, but there's so many other directions it can go in. And I think In the Wake can play a pivotal role in amplifying these stories, because these are stories that mainstream media is not glamorous enough, or what we're doing is not engaging in poverty porn, right? Or trauma porn. So they don't want that. Right? Because we're not just sticking to the, oh, this happened and the trauma, because that's what mainstream media wants to sensationalize. And we're saying, no. Yeah, trauma was involved, but there's resilience, you know, and they don't want to see us resilient. So I think this is where we can show where resilience exists.
What would you say to a child who is going through it right now? Parents incarcerated, there they are feeling what they're feeling, young to old, but they're still, you know, children of incarcerated persons. What would you say to them?
I would say the story doesn't end here, right? There's a future, right? You just have to let it unfold. Absolutely.
Oh, wait, there's more. The best part's on the way. Keeping the faith, as Professor Tonisha Taylor has. We are so proud of you. We hope this work will be published. If somebody's smart, they'll get in touch with her right away so that we can benefit from experience. We can benefit from the love that still grew out of the seeds that your mother, your grandmother, your family had planted inside of you, that all was not lost. As a matter of fact, there is so much more here gained. And we thank you so much for spending great time In the Wake TV. We love you. We're proud of you. As a matter of fact, we need to send up a flare when you get the doctorate complete. And in the meantime, just continue to be the light that you are, and keep shining that light in honor of Sharon.
Thank you.
All righty. This is In the Wake TV. Have a great, great night.